Now, if you don't have brand building content, above the line marketing out there that is addressing those two things, you are constantly missing out on the opportunity to build connection in an emotive way and appeal to identity at that top of funnel, which is building your pipeline for the bottom of funnel further down the line.
Karl, can you tell us, why do you think so many marketers still separate brand and performance?
I think it's probably something that's come about from the best part of 20 years worth of marketing evolution. I think historically there was so much focus on above the line media that could not be tracked. And then we entered this era of performance marketing where all of a sudden we could track everything. From the first click to the last click to the actual sale itself. And what that created was a disassociation between above the line and below the line marketing. And whilst your kind of CFOs loved it because they could track everything, it created a very constrained view of marketing where everyone then focused on the bottom of funnel actions that they could drive and stopped looking at the bigger picture in terms of brand awareness, preference building and pipeline building.
So through that lens, what do you say to CMOs that still see brand as a luxury and not a performance driver?
I would ask them what their customer acquisition costs look like, because I think there's this inherent focus on the below the line performance metrics, but that's often at the cost of long-term brand building. And the thing with brand building is it has a multiplier effect. So it has the ability to increase preference, build familiarity with the brand, lower barriers to entry. And by doing all of those things consistently over a period of time, you are creating more affiliation with the brand and therefore more likelihood to buy. If you divorce those two things and focus just on the short-term metrics, inherently you are then going to increase your customer acquisition costs because you're only targeting people who are ready to buy and everyone else falls to the wayside.
So whilst it's a short-term gain because you've got someone with absolute intent that's ready to press a buy now button for whatever it is, actually you're then fighting in a hyper-competitive space. And at that point, we're saying there's no brand preference because all you've done is target me at point of purchase, or there's no brand preference for you necessarily because you weren't in any other part of a journey. You're just rocking up at the end and waving a flag and going, pick me, pick me.
Yeah, I think in part, I think there are always people that are in market and ready to buy. If you are focused purely on bottom of funnel based marketing where you're trying to drive a user to a purchase or a lead generation style behavior, there's only a finite number of people that are in that headspace at any one point in time. And there are then probably two more sets of people that are either in that kind of early consideration stage or even not even problem aware. Now, if you don't have brand building content, above the line marketing out there that is addressing those two things, you are constantly missing out on the opportunity to build connection in an emotive way and appeal to identity at that top of funnel, which is building your pipeline for the bottom of funnel further down the line.
So where have you seen brand and performance coming together, complementing each other and delivering better results?
Yeah, I think increasingly more with the lack of accuracy around cookie-based retargeting and things like that, marketers are now starting to look across the full funnel. They're thinking a little bit longer term and they're starting to combine more traditional above-the-line media channels that allow for authentic storytelling and engagement with the brand, so things like the rise of creators and influencers and tapping into their authentic networks, using that to produce organic content that really tells a story about the brand and has that identity-based appeal, and then looking at the best performers in that space organically and then leveraging that into paid. What that allows you to do is take your best performers and then start to run content that is already proven in nature, both top and bottom of funnel. So the paid advertising is being used as an amplifier for what is already being effective.
So with that in mind, do you think marketers are measuring the wrong things in performance?
I think there's a bit of a latent shift where marketers are now starting to look at the bigger picture and try and incorporate some other metrics. I think that the last 8-9 years of paid advertising and the boom of Facebook ads has created, from a marketing practitioner standpoint, more of a focus on ROAS and conversion rates and bottom of funnel metrics and all of the kind of vanity metrics. What needs to happen, and I think marketers are slowly moving in this direction, is then starting to look at what are the above the line channels that I have in the mix? How can I incorporate influencer or creator marketing? How can I build search-based content that is going to be indexed by both AI and traditional search engines to build that early stage demand and brand preference? And then how do I join that up with the bottom of funnel marketing as well?
So it's a luxury that very few brands have, because you're always in flight and you're always iterating. But if you were starting from scratch on a performance-led campaign, where would you begin?
For me, it always starts with the audience. So can we understand their pain points, their desires, what are their goals, what are their aspirations? I think with performance marketing over the last 10 years, so many people try to skip this step and go straight to what is it that I need to say, talking about products and features and what is the thing I'm going to offer to get them over the line. What we need to do is go back to what's our positioning, what's our point of difference, how can I build an emotional connection with my prospect or my end user. And I think it's only when we start to do that in a more holistic sense and then join that up with some of the more bottom of funnel activities that we're going to start to see a stronger evergreen pipeline, both top of funnel and bottom of funnel.
Which I suppose has been, whilst we've always focused on the messaging in the performance and the sharper end of it, it's been one of my challenges, what are the features and functions that then overcome those challenges, and to talk at that very grassroots level. Whereas actually storytelling and emotional storytelling and that part of it hasn't been in that mix for a while. So it's a complete shift in mindset to go, how do I make someone want my brand? And that does, I mean, you know, recently on LinkedIn, there's that fantastic, someone's created Nike, if Nike ad was for B2B. And I think B2B has always struggled with this, the emotional storytelling part. We assume it's a business buying a business. It's never a business buying a business. It's a person buying a person, no matter what. And they've constructed that ad, and it really does highlight the fundamental difference of, oh, it's this type of rubber, or it's this type of traction, or it's this type of weight, and it's like, my God, this
Pretty dry.
There's no emotion in this whatsoever.
No, for sure. Yeah, I think there needs to be a move back to more identity-based appeal and a higher level of storytelling. Traditionally, we'd have talked about market propositions and go-to-market strategy, and I think it's become so hygienistic in what we communicate around in terms of those product features that we forget the fact that we're appealing to individuals and people that have their own goals and aspirations, and the way in which we build connection is by appealing to that, and that's what builds brand preference over time.
Awesome. And then taking that on, because obviously you've got CMOs, marketeers out there ready to brief their agency or their internal teams, what would you be saying their starting point should be? I need this before we do anything. What can they leverage and what can they demand to make that next step make more sense and elevate it from sort of the performance bottom funnel territory?
Yeah, I think a very deep understanding of the prospect themselves, what are their goals and aspirations, and what are their key challenges or the key steps in their decision-making journey as they move through the marketing funnel. If you have that understanding from the get-go, you're able to do two things. The first is you're able to build a campaign concept or value proposition based on insight, something that is going to create that emotional connection. And the second is you're going to be able to identify what are the pieces of content that I can create at each stage of that funnel so that I can gradually move them towards a point of decision.
And then as a final point leading on from that, we've obviously worked in a 3-step funnel for a long time. We suddenly have to consider and make a step change into, there needs to be something above this. There needs to be that above the line emotional storytelling. Does that mean our funnel is now a 4-step funnel?
I actually think it's more a case of thinking about the funnel as less of a linear process. So at any one time, you need content in play that is going to appeal to people at an emotional, identity-based level and build that kind of early stage awareness and demand. And at the same time, have pieces of content in play that are going to enable people to evaluate the product or start to shortlist potential vendors and move through those sort of middle and bottom stages of the funnel. Are they going to progress through that in a linear fashion? Yes, perhaps, but also likely not. They're going to kind of bounce around between those different phases, and over time they're gradually going to progress through it. So I think brands and organizations need to think about, how can I create evergreen marketing campaigns that have those 3 different layers of content that are going to allow me as a consumer to dip in and out of that at any one point in time, and gradually build preference for the brand or the product over a period of time until I reach that kind of micro moment where I'm ready to convert or take the next step.
Brilliant. Thank you, Karl. That's been super insightful. If you're wrestling with the idea that performance is where you're comfortable and what you need to do, but brand is actually knocking on the door and saying we need to do something here, we hope that's been useful to you. We're obviously doing it with a lot of clients and got a lot of experience in bringing those things together and making them complement each other. That was SmartCraft. Thank you, Karl.
Thanks very much.